It was the summer of 2019 when I moved to Portland, Oregon. I had recently graduated from college and landed a job in the city. To save money, I decided to furnish my new apartment with secondhand items. I turned to Facebook Marketplace, which seemed like a treasure trove of affordable and unique pieces. One afternoon, while browsing through listings, I stumbled upon a beautiful vintage mirror. It was ornate, with intricate carvings and a weathered patina that gave it character. The seller, named Anna, had posted it for a surprisingly low price. I messaged her immediately, expressing my interest. Anna responded quickly, mentioning that the mirror was still available and that I could come by her place to pick it up. She provided an address in the Pearl District, a trendy area of Portland known for its art galleries and boutiques. We agreed on a time, and I set off, excited to get the mirror and add it to my new home. When I arrived, I was greeted by a woman in her 40s who introduced herself as Anna. She was friendly and welcoming, inviting me into her apartment to see the mirror. The place was filled with beautiful antiques and vintage decor, and the mirror looked even more stunning in person. I paid her in cash, and she helped me carry it to my car. We chatted briefly about our mutual love for vintage items, and then I left feeling pleased with my purchase. Back at my apartment, I hung the mirror in my living room. It added a touch of elegance and charm to the space, and I couldn't stop admiring it. Over the next few days, I noticed that my apartment felt cozier and more complete with the mirror in place. Then, strange things started happening. It began with small, almost unnoticeable occurrences. I would come home to find the mirror slightly tilted, even though I was certain I had hung it securely. Sometimes, I would hear faint creaking noises coming from the living room, but when I checked, nothing seemed out of place. One evening, as I was watching TV, I caught a glimpse of movement in the mirror's reflection. It was quick, like a shadow passing by, but it was enough to make me uneasy. I dismissed it as my imagination and tried to focus on the show. The next day, I decided to take a closer look at the mirror. As I examined it, I noticed something I hadn't seen before: tiny initials carved into the wooden frame. They were faint and barely visible, but they were there. I wondered if they were the initials of the original owner, or perhaps a craftsman who had made the mirror. Curiosity got the better of me, and I decided to message Anna to ask if she knew anything about the initials. She replied saying she hadn't noticed them before and didn't know their significance. She then mentioned she had bought the mirror at an estate sale a few months prior and had no further information about its history. As the days went on, the unsettling incidents continued. I began to feel an inexplicable sense of dread whenever I was near the mirror. One night, I woke up to the sound of whispering. It was faint, almost inaudible, but it seemed to be coming from the living room. Heart pounding, I got up to investigate. The whispering stopped as soon as I entered the room, and I found myself standing in front of the mirror staring at my reflection. The next morning, I decided to move the mirror to a different room, hoping it would ease my growing anxiety. I placed it in the hallway out of direct view and felt a slight sense of relief, but that relief was short-lived. Later that week, I listed a few items for sale on Facebook Marketplace, hoping to declutter and make some extra cash. One of the items was an old bookshelf that I no longer needed. A woman named Emily messaged me, expressing interest in the bookshelf. She seemed nice enough, and we arranged a time for her to come by and pick it up. When Emily arrived, she was cheerful and friendly. As we chatted, she glanced down the hallway and noticed the mirror. Her expression changed, and she asked where I had gotten it. I explained that I had bought it from another seller on Facebook Marketplace a few weeks ago. Emily looked uneasy and told me that she recognized the mirror. She said she had seen it before at an antique shop she used to visit frequently. According to her, the mirror had a reputation for being cursed. The shop owner had mentioned that previous owners reported strange occurrences and bad luck after bringing the mirror into their homes. I laughed nervously, dismissing her story as a coincidence or superstition. Emily shrugged and said she just wanted to give me a heads up. She took the bookshelf, paid me, and left, leaving me with a sense of unease that lingered long after she was gone. That night, I couldn't sleep. Emily's words echoed in my mind, and I found myself staring at the ceiling, unable to shake the feeling of dread. Around 3 a.m., I heard the whispering again. This time it was clearer, like multiple voices speaking in hushed tones. The sound seemed to emanate from the hallway where the mirror was. I gathered my courage and went to the hallway, my heart pounding. The whispering stopped as I approached the mirror, but the sense of being watched was overwhelming. I decided I couldn't take it anymore. I grabbed a sheet from the linen closet and draped it over the mirror, hoping to block whatever malevolent presence seemed to be attached to it. The next day, I resolved to get rid of the mirror. I posted it back on Facebook Marketplace, describing it as a beautiful vintage piece with a lot of character. I didn't mention the strange occurrences or the whispered warnings. Within a few hours, I received a message from a man named Tom, who was interested in buying it. We arranged a time for him to come by and pick it up. When Tom arrived, he was enthusiastic about the mirror, admiring its craftsmanship and detailing. I helped him load it into his car, and as he drove away, I felt a huge weight lift off my shoulders. Finally, I could breathe easy again, but my relief was short-lived. The following week, I received a message from Tom. He seemed frantic, asking if I had experienced anything strange with the mirror. He described hearing whispers and seeing shadows, much like I had. He mentioned that he had researched the initials and discovered they belonged to a woman named Laura, who had died under mysterious circumstances. Tom demanded to know if I had known about the mirror's history and accused me of selling him a cursed item. I assured him that I had no idea about its dark past and suggested he get rid of it immediately. A few days later, Tom messaged me again, saying he had returned the mirror to the antique shop where Emily had seen it originally. The shop owner accepted it without question, as if they were accustomed to dealing with such items. Although the mirror was gone, the fear and anxiety it brought into my life lingered. I became more cautious about what I bought on Facebook Marketplace, always wary of the stories and histories behind second-hand items. I also became more guarded about my online interactions, realizing that not everyone and everything is as it seems. To anyone reading this, please be careful when buying items online, especially antiques with unknown histories. Protect your home and your peace of mind. Sometimes the most ordinary objects can carry the darkest secrets. A few years back, I moved to Chicago for a new job and found myself in need of making new friends. Being an introvert, I decided to join various Facebook groups related to my interests: music, hiking, book clubs, and even a few local community groups. I thought it was a good way to connect with people without the immediate pressure of face-to-face interaction. One night, I posted a photo of a beautiful sunset from my new apartment overlooking Lake Michigan. The likes and comments rolled in, and it felt good. It was like a little virtual hug from the world saying, "Welcome to Chicago." But amidst the flood of notifications, one comment stood out. It was from a guy named David. David wrote asking if the view was from North Shore Apartments. I found it a bit unsettling that he guessed my location so accurately, but I shrugged it off After all, it wasn't hard to figure out given the angle of the photo. I replied with a simple confirmation and mentioned that I had just moved there a few weeks ago and was loving it so far. David and I started chatting in the comments section. He seemed friendly enough, mentioning that he lived nearby and suggesting a few local places I should check out. I appreciated his tips, thinking it was nice of him to help a newcomer settle in. A few days later, he sent me a friend request. I accepted it, thinking it would be nice to have another local friend. Over the next few weeks, David became a regular presence in my Facebook life. He liked and commented on nearly everything I posted, always with friendly and encouraging remarks. He sent me links to events happening in the city, and even messaged me a couple of times, asking how I was adjusting to life in Chicago. One Saturday afternoon, while browsing through Facebook, I noticed David had tagged me in a post. It was a link to a local farmer's market he thought I might enjoy. I thanked him in the comments and said it looked great and that I would definitely check it out. He replied, saying he might see me there then. That's when things started to feel a little too coincidental. That farmer's market was something I had mentioned briefly in one of our earlier conversations. I decided to go anyway, telling myself I was being paranoid. Maybe he really was just a nice guy trying to help me settle in. I arrived at the market around 10 a.m. It was bustling with people, stalls full of fresh produce, homemade crafts, and the mouth-watering aroma of various food trucks. I wandered around, enjoying the atmosphere, when suddenly I felt a tap on my shoulder. I turned around to see David, smiling broadly. He greeted me enthusiastically, saying he knew I would come. We chatted for a while, and I tried to keep the conversation light and casual. He seemed genuinely nice, but there was something in his eyes that made me uneasy. After a few minutes, I excused myself, saying I needed to buy some vegetables before they sold out. As I walked away, I could feel his eyes on me. I spent the rest of the day trying to avoid him, ducking behind stalls and blending into crowds. It felt silly, but I couldn't shake the feeling of unease. The next day, I got a message from David saying it was great seeing me yesterday and hoped I got everything I needed. I replied politely but briefly, hoping he'd get the hint, but he didn't. He kept messaging me, liking my posts, and commenting on everything I did online. One evening, I posted about a new cafe I discovered in Lincoln Park. Within minutes, David commented saying he loved that place and their lattes were the best, mentioning he might see me there sometime. His omnipresence started to creep me out. He seemed to know where I was at all times. I began to wonder if he was following me. I checked my privacy settings and made sure only friends could see my posts. I even considered blocking him but hesitated, not wanting to seem rude or paranoid. A week later, I decided to test a theory. I posted about a yoga class I planned to attend, a class I had no intention of going to. Sure enough, David commented, mentioning he might join me. That was the last straw. I blocked him on Facebook, hoping that would be the end of it. For a few days, it was. My online world felt a little safer without his constant presence. But then, strange things started happening. I began receiving anonymous friend requests and messages from profiles with no pictures and barely any information. The messages were vague but unsettling, saying things like, "You can't hide forever and I know where you live." I reported the profiles and deleted the messages, but they kept coming. My anxiety grew, and I found myself constantly looking over my shoulder, especially when I was out and about in the city. I started changing my routines, taking different routes home, and avoiding places I had previously mentioned on Facebook. One night, as I was walking home from work, I noticed a shadowy figure following me. I quickened my pace, my heart pounding in my chest. The figure kept pace with me, and I could hear the sound of footsteps echoing in the quiet street. I turned a corner and broke into a run, not stopping until I reached my apartment building. I glanced back, but the figure was gone. I reported the incident to the police, but without concrete evidence, there wasn't much they could do. They advised me to stay vigilant and keep a record of any further incidents. A few days later, I received a package at my door with no return address. Inside was a single piece of paper with the words, "You can't block me in real life." The message sent chills down my spine. I knew it was from David. I changed all my online passwords, deleted my Facebook account, and tried to erase any trace of my online presence. But the sense of dread remained. I couldn't shake the feeling that he was still watching, waiting. I decided to move to a new apartment, one with better security and a more anonymous location. I informed my close friends and family of the situation and asked them to be cautious about what they posted online. Despite all these precautions, the feeling of being followed persisted. I began seeing David everywhere, in the grocery store, at the bus stop, even in the lobby of my new apartment building. Each time I saw him, he would smile, that unsettling smile, never approaching, just watching. The police were sympathetic, but still unable to do much without solid evidence. I felt trapped, living in a constant state of fear. My once vibrant social life dwindled as I isolated myself, afraid of drawing more attention. One day I received a call from an unknown number. The voice on the other end was calm and familiar. It was David. He said I couldn't escape him and that he would always be there. That was the breaking point. I packed my bags and left Chicago, moving to a small town in another state. I changed my phone number, got a new job, and started fresh. It was a drastic move, but it felt necessary for my safety and sanity. For a while, things were peaceful. I slowly rebuilt my life, making new friends and finding joy in simple things. But the fear never completely went away. I still looked over my shoulder, wary of shadows and strangers. Months later, I received a letter in the mail with no return address. Inside was a photo of me from my first day in the new town, along with a note that read, "Miss me." I realized then that I might never truly be free from David. He had become a ghost in my life, haunting me with his relentless obsession. I contacted the police once more, but without a clear lead, they could only offer sympathy and advice. I decided to share my story online, hoping it would serve as a warning to others about the dangers of sharing too much information on social media. The response was overwhelming. People from all over shared their own experiences, and I found some solace in knowing I wasn't alone. But the fear remained. Every day I lived with the possibility that David could be watching, waiting for the right moment to reappear. My life had changed forever, marked by a digital encounter that became all too real. Back in 2017, I moved to Austin, Texas for a new job. Being new to the city and not knowing anyone, I decided to join a few local Facebook groups to help me settle in. One of these groups was dedicated to exploring the hidden gems of Austin, restaurants, parks, and events that only locals knew about. It seemed like the perfect way to get to know my new home and meet some interesting people. The group was active, with members constantly posting about upcoming events, hidden trails, and local eateries. One post that caught my eye was about a secret hiking spot called Devil's Hollow. The photos looked stunning, and the description promised an off-the-beaten-path adventure with beautiful scenery and a serene atmosphere. I was intrigued and decided to comment, asking for more details. Several group members replied with enthusiastic recommendations and tips on how to get there. One member, who went by the name of Jake, seemed particularly knowledgeable about the area. He mentioned that he had been there several times and offered to take me and a few others on a guided hike the following weekend. Eager to explore and make new friends, I agreed to join. On the day of the hike, I met Jake and the other group members at a popular cafe downtown. There were 5 of us in total, and everyone seemed friendly and excited about the adventure. We carpooled to the trailhead, which was located about an hour outside of the city. The drive was filled with lively conversation, and I felt optimistic about the day ahead. When we arrived at Devil's Hollow, the trailhead was unmarked, just as Jake had described. The path was narrow and winding, surrounded by dense woods. As we hiked, Jake pointed out various plants and wildlife, sharing his knowledge of the area. It felt like a genuine exploration, far removed from the crowded city trails. After about an hour of hiking, we reached a clearing with a breathtaking view of a secluded waterfall. The water cascaded down moss-covered rocks into a crystal-clear pool. It was even more beautiful than the photos had shown. We took a break, enjoying the peacefulness of the spot, and snapped some pictures. As the day went on, we continued to explore the area, following Jake's lead. He took us to a series of caves that he said were rarely visited. The entrance to the caves was hidden by thick vegetation, making it easy to see why they were off the beaten path. Jake handed out flashlights, and we ventured inside. The caves were cool and damp, with narrow passages that twisted and turned. It was thrilling at first, but as we ventured deeper, a sense of unease began to settle over me. The further we went, the more disoriented I became. Jake seemed to know the way, but the rest of us were growing increasingly uneasy. At one point, Jake stopped and said he needed to check something further ahead. He asked us to wait while he scouted the next section of the cave. We agreed, not wanting to split up in such a confusing environment. Minutes passed, then half an hour. We started calling out for Jake, but there was no response. Panic set in as we realized we were lost. The labyrinth of caves was disorienting, and without Jake's guidance, we had no idea how to find our way back. One of the group members suggested we retrace our steps, but the passageways all looked the same, and it was easy to get turned around. Our flashlights began to dim, adding to the growing sense of dread. We decided to stick together and move slowly, hoping to find the exit, or at least some sign of where we had come from. After what felt like hours of wandering, we stumbled upon a large cavern with a small opening that led to the outside. Relief washed over us as we crawled through the opening and emerged into the daylight. Disoriented and exhausted, we made our way back to the trailhead. Jake's car was gone. We were shaken and confused, trying to piece together what had happened. We called the police and reported Jake missing, but without a clear idea of where he had gone or what had happened, there was little they could do immediately. Over the next few days, the police conducted a search of the area, but found no sign of Jake. They questioned us extensively, trying to determine if foul play was involved, but we were as baffled as they were. The incident left a dark cloud over what had started as an exciting adventure. Back on Facebook, the group's atmosphere changed dramatically. Members who had known Jake expressed shock and disbelief at his disappearance. Some speculated that he might have staged his own disappearance for some unknown reason, while others feared the worst. As days turned into weeks and then months, Jake was never found. The mystery of his disappearance haunted me, and I found myself revisiting the events of that day, searching for clues or signs that I might have missed. Eventually, I decided to leave the Facebook group and distance myself from the memories of that fateful hike. I deleted my account and stopped participating in similar activities. The sense of unease never fully left me, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something sinister had happened in those caves. Months passed and life moved on. I made new friends in Austin and settled into my job. However, the memory of Devil's Hollow and Jake's disappearance lingered in the back of my mind. I avoided hiking and stuck to more populated areas, always wary of venturing too far off the beaten path. Then, one day, I received a private message on Facebook from an unknown user. The profile had no picture and no information. The message simply asked if I remembered Devil's Hollow. I felt a chill run down my spine. I thought I had left that nightmare behind, but it seemed to be resurfacing. I ignored the message, hoping it was some kind of sick joke. But over the next few days, more messages followed. They included photos from our hike, taken from angles that suggested someone had been watching us. The final message was a video, showing the interior of the caves. The footage was shaky, but it clearly showed someone entering a hidden chamber deep within the cave system. The video ended abruptly, with the screen going black and the sound of heavy breathing. Terrified, I contacted the police again and showed them the messages. They took the case seriously this time, considering the new evidence. A thorough search of Devil's Hollow was conducted, and this time, they discovered the hidden chamber from the video. Inside, they found disturbing evidence that suggested someone had been living there. Old food wrappers, a makeshift bed, and a journal filled with incoherent ramblings. The journal mentioned Jake by name, as well as the names of the other group members. It was clear that whoever had written it had been following us long before the hike. The police were able to trace the messages to a man who had a history of stalking and harassment. He was arrested, and under interrogation, he confessed to luring us to Devil's Hollow with the intention of trapping us there. Jake had stumbled upon him in the caves and was attacked, leading to his disappearance. Jake's remains were found buried near the hidden chamber. The discovery brought some closure, but it also left us all deeply scarred. The man who had orchestrated this nightmare was sentenced to life in prison, but the trauma of that day stayed with us. I moved away from Austin shortly after, unable to shake the fear that had taken root in my heart. I settled in a small town where I could feel safe and began the long process of healing. I rarely use social media anymore, and when I do, I am extremely cautious about the information I share. Please remember to always be careful when joining online groups and meeting strangers. Always let someone know where you're going and who you'll be with. Thank you for watching. If you found these stories gripping, don't forget to subscribe for more spine-tingling content. For another hair-raising tale, check out our suggested video. And if you're hungry for more eerie encounters, dive into our playlist featuring similar chilling narratives.